some of our landings were desperate adventures. We are now prepared to meet the inevitable counterattacks with power and with confidence.
This is Gary Butterfield.
This is Cole Ross.
And you're listening to the Bonfire Side Chat Roundup. Roundtable Roundup.
Roundtable is the thing. The roundups are the WAF dispatch.
I know, but I was feeling cowboy.
Oh, Gary, we're always feeling cowboy.
I know. I got my chaps on. I don't know if they let cowboys into heaven. I don't know if they're going to let me go into heaven. Yeah, this is welcome, everybody. We got what we consider to be kind of a special episode. And welcome a larger everybody.
Yes, giving you a bit of a taste here if you're unsure about taking the plunge and listening to us talk about Elden Ring on the premium episodes. Giving you a taste of what these roundtables are like. And putting a good foot forward, because I mean we've done the Austin interview and it's really good. We talked to Austin Walker, but we've also got the SekiroDubi like cut content stuff that we're going to be digging into, and both of those are like exemplary. We want more people to hear this.
Yeah, we think they're good. For people who don't know, Austin Walker, esteemed games journalist, formerly of Waypoint, and just like all about podcaster extraordinaire, does a really good, thoughtful interview with us. SekiroDubi is a YouTuber who I followed for a long time, who is doing wonderful work with cut content. Done a lot of like quest lines being restored and such in Elden Ring, and was very gracious and took the time to answer some questions in interview form, in email form, for us. The other reason I think this is a good public episode is that, so we also read responses during these to people have to the areas we've gone through. This is one of the last ones we're going to do because we're rounding up the end of Elden Ring prior to DLC. And there are some things that we missed here. And I think that one of the things that I'm I don't feel what humans experience is pride, but one thing that I like about our show is that like there's lots of things we don't know. There are things that we're not experts on. So like we do want to tap people in. This is a collaborative effort. So, and we got some really good insight from listeners as well this episode. So
we did. So welcome. If you want to hear all of these, give you the spiel, patreon.com/Duckfeed.tv. $5, that gets you access to everything Bonfire Side Chat. Also, all of the premium Watch Out for Fireballs we've done, extra Abject Sufferings, whole bonus shows like Unfilmable. It's a lot.
It's a lot. One thing that's kind of in the news with Remnant 2, kind of everybody loving that. We did cover Remnant 1. That's in there as well. Before Elden Ring, we did a bunch of Souls likes, and who knows, we might end up doing Remnant 2 as well, and that will probably be behind that'll be also on this show.
Yes,
so if you're interested in that. And without too much further ado, let us cut in our interview we had with Austin Walker. And as mentioned, we are now joined by Austin Walker. Hello, Austin.
Hey, how's it going?
It's great. It's good.
Going just fine. Yeah.
Going just fine.
Yeah.
I'm all right. I spent the last few days sick, and so now I am not sick, and I instead am going to talk about Elden Ring, which is a joy, a boon. Maybe it helped me get better faster, knowing that I had a deadline by which I would have to talk about Elden Ring.
Yeah. I've been wrestling with bronchitis, and no matter how much I think about Elden Ring, it's not going away.
It's not going away.
The Christian Science perspective of just thinking it away is somehow not working. And
you don't even know how to pray it away? Is that not a Christian Science? You can't even ask for some sort of intercession? No?
I've been trying.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just the intercessions in this economy. Yeah, so people listening are probably familiar with your work, but in case they are not, how might people know you? Who are you online?
Who I well, I have been Austin_Walker on Twitter for years, and these days it is hard to recommend folks go over there.
Yeah.
As even in the bad days of old Twitter, where you're like, the hell site. Today seems worse. But you can find me on co-host and other places. I'm all over the place now.
Yeah. Awesome. What are you doing now? What are you doing currently?
So I after years being in games media, where I was at Waypoint, which is now Remap, they just relaunched as Remap, all kind of a worker owned, Patreon type vibe. So shout outs to them. I ended up going into game dev. I work for a company called Possibility Space now with some great folks. I'm doing a bunch of world building. I can't share much at all at this point. Unfortunately, I would love to plug that work, but instead, I guess I'll plug some other stuff. I do a tabletop podcast called Friends at the Table that has been coming out for 9 years this September. We are in the middle of a sci-fi season. Armored Core is right around the corner. And if you are interested in getting into mechs and a mech mindset, you should go listen to, I would say, Partisan, which is our second most recent sci-fi season that leads into the current one, Palisade. Big mech stories happening there. Armored Core, a huge influence on me.
Nice.
That podcast is huge on our Slack.
Oh, really? That's wild.
Yeah, we have a non us podcast channel on there and people talk about Friends at the Table all the time.
That's very sweet. Yeah. Thank you to the fans there. I also I'll shout out another podcast. I just started doing a podcast called Buried by Genre with Cameron Kunzelman and Michael Lutz as part of the Range to Touch network. They asked me to come on and talk about the Gene Wolfe Book of the New Sun series, which is a very Soulsian, book series, and that has been a joy to do. And finally, I'm part of A More Civilized Age, a Star Wars podcast that's currently figuring out what to cover in the middle of the SAG-AFTRA strike, because we were covering Rebels, which isn't struck work, but is basically a predecessor to Ahsoka, their big new summer TV show. And it's like a little too close to promotion for us, which it depends on how you read their rules, like whether it breaks the guidelines or not. But mostly it's like, let's not direct people to Disney Plus in the middle of a strike. So we might end up covering a video game, for instance, instead. Oh, yeah. So turns out there's some other stuff that we could do theoretically. Yeah.
Saw people in the mentions clamoring for Coder. You got lots to work with.
A lot of people would love it for us to do that. So it's on the list as a possibility. So that's what you might know me from. These days I don't post as much, but every now and then I'll get out there and write something or whatever. But yeah, Twitter, Austin_Walker, Austin on co-host. Elsewhere, also Blue Sky. I'm something on Blue Sky. Blue Sky is, I still don't know how to tell people where I am on Blue Sky.
It's getting there. So. It's getting there. It's getting there.
Are y'all over there now? Are you? Do I follow you there? I might follow you there already, but if I don't,
I'm over there.
So. It's a funny experience being in that nascent age of that.
It sure is.
What kind of briefly, what is your history with Soulsborne and FromSoft more generally?
God, I mean, at this point, my FromSoft time, my FromSoft time, I just talked about Armored Core, right? Like, it goes back to the PS1 era, right?
Nice.
Where I think if I saw a list of every FromSoft game on the PS1, I mean, I guess both PS1 and PS2, because they were putting out lots of RPGs in that early PS2 era too, right?
Evergrace and such.
Yeah, the Evergraces and the Eternal Rings, right?
Yeah.
And I was playing those games without really understanding a lot about what that meant. But I would say that, like, going back, I was an Armored Core guy more than a Kingsfield guy, right? I played one of the Kingsfield games at the time. And then at some point, a friend of mine, Phil Caron, was like, "Oh, Austin, you have to play this game called Demon's Souls. It's by the Armored Core people. I know you're an Armored Core fan, and it's never going to get localized. You have to import it." And so I played through Demon's Souls imported on a Japanese PSN account, or a Japanese, a PlayStation account on the PS3, and beat it, via FAQs and like translations of that's not a game that you need a lot of guidance on. Demon Souls generally is a Souls game, right?
Yeah.
But you can, once you understand enough of the menu stuff, you can play that game even though it was in Japanese. I had an absolute blast with it, to the degree that when Dark Souls came out, I was not a big Dark Souls person, because I was like, I've already done this in such a way that I got the itch scratched the first time. Then Dark Souls 2, and I watched lots of people play through Dark Souls 1, and eventually I would play it. And I think Dark Souls 1 is a great game. I'm not an anti-Dark Souls 1 person. But it meant that I never had that thing of, oh my God, look at, you can see down to Firelink Shrine from here. You can look up and see, you know what I mean? That sort of Clockwork World thing of Dark Souls 1 never was important to me for what the Souls games were, because Demon Souls was my first Souls game. And the fractured nature of that game, doubled by I'm on a message board trying to piece together what the rings do, because we're reading translated, fan translated descriptions together, because that game just came out. There's a community of Western players, so that fractured stuff was already part of my experience of Souls. So like, I'm a big Dark Souls 2 guy, even though that world, even though you take the elevator up through the Harvest, what I mean, from Harvest Valley up into the lava or whatever.
It's more fractured. It's more hub and spoke.
It's more hub and spoke.
You're among friends here with the.
I not that long ago listened to your Dark Souls 2 stuff, because I didn't have time to play through it, and I was like, what if I just listen to them talk about it?
Yeah,
and that was a joy. I did also replay Dark Souls 1, the remaster or the Switch release of that, which was actually really fun to do. There was a really active community. I did some of the Dark Moon stuff, which I had never done before. Is that right? Is that the name of that covenant? Yeah. Okay.
The cop one. They go in punishing the sinners.
Exactly. Yeah. And that was really fun to do. It's fun to be a cop for a little while,
just for pretend. Stuff. As long as it's not in real life. It's games are about fantasies.
That's exactly. I was role playing really in a serious way. And I ended up reviewing Dark Souls 3 for Giant Bomb, and it was one of my first reviews there when I was there 8 years ago now, and thought that was like pretty good, and have just been a fan of everything that they've done basically in the time since. I mean, everything they've done is not true, because I haven't played Deracine, the VR thing, but
it's neat.
And I think I have a fairly idiosyncratic, like, personal ranking in which things like Dark Souls 2 and Sekiro are higher than Bloodborne. I'm not a big I like Bloodborne. Yeah. Bloodborne's a good game, but it's not in my top 3, and that's, I think, different than most people.
Very idiosyncratic. Yeah. Did you play? This is like the most inane side question thing ever. But when you played Dark Souls on Switch, because I did that when that came out on Switch, did you play in handheld mode?
I did, almost exclusively, actually.
So did I. And the thing I found that was interesting about that is that it is harder to control, but it made me think about the controls more.
Way more. Yes, absolutely.
It was a really interesting, like, form factor influencing how you interface with the game. Like, this is not as good, in an objective sense, if I'm measuring this in good, but I am being more intentional. And that coupled with the fact that it was a game I know like the back of my hand, actually added a lot of new dimensionality to it. And I was really surprised.
It was a fun game for me I played it on a bunch of trips, actually. And it's a game I know pretty well. And it's a game I think of as being a game that I play in deep, long sessions. And to play it on the Switch, where I was like, okay, I know this route well enough. I can go from this bonfire to that bonfire in the 20 minutes I have while visiting my parents for Christmas. And I have 20 minutes before dinner starts. Okay, can I make this run? I have an hour on a bus. What can I get done in that hour? And I know the game well enough that I can find a task I can get done in an hour. Do you know what I mean? It might just be, I'm going to go level up my mace so that I can deal with these skeletons, or make it holy so that I can deal with the undead. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that sort of little task-based play suddenly became a way I was playing the game, which I hadn't previously ever.
The
Playing
structure of the game really
sprints.
works that
Yes.
well too, because the game is non-linear to a degree that you do have a lot of freedom of what you can tackle
Yes.
at any given moment, and you can kind of fit it to the time constraints that you have.
Yes.
Which is a really neat thing.
Totally.
So thinking about Sekiro and Bloodborne, this kind of lineage that we have, Elden Ring. We're in the Elden Ring season. We're eagerly awaiting a release date for the DLC. It made more money than anyone ever expected.
Yes.
Wildly successful, huge breakthrough hit.
Which was like, I'm sure you talked about this to death, right? But like, as people who were at the forefront of Souls games, right, who've been studying them and talking about them for a long time, how did that hit for y'all? As like, did you expect? How did you feel about it when it did as well as it did?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I don't want to speak for you, Cole.
Okay.
For me, I felt good about it because it felt like, so I'm pretty cool on Sekiro. I didn't like Sekiro as much.
Sure.
In part because it didn't feel as expressive to play. I didn't have as many options.
You don't have builds. You don't have, totally.
Yes, and that's the thing I really value in these games.
Yeah, I was just talking about this on Abnormal Mapping. I did a Final Fantasy 16 episode, and I was talking about how much I value games like the Souls games for their expressivity in things like build, and even if the moment-to-moment combat. Jackson, who's a co-host over there, was saying like, even though I only have 3 or 4 or 8 swings with a sword, getting to that moment and choosing that sword and
yes,
how I'm interacting with the world has all of this expressivity.
What the thing that I felt Elden Ring, I'll come back to your original question, but the thing Elden Ring did was it put a lot of the decision making before combat again.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I was really happy the company was rewarded for that, because I felt like the Bloodborne, Dark Souls 3, Sekiro kind of trajectory was towards more limited options and more Twitch-based kind of character action stuff, which is good for what it is, but it's not my preference, right?
Right.
So I was very happy that it had this breakthrough, because it's a company I like. It's a company I want to do well. I think that even despite their success, they're still making games that are unlike other people. And I wanted them to be rewarded for going in a direction I liked.
Yep.
Which is a kind of an artless response. It just means more treats for Gary, but it is what I wanted.
But listen, you're allowed that as long as you're upfront about it. You know what I mean? I'd so much rather you say that than come up with some BS reason for why that's good actually for the industry or something. Which some people will do though. Like, come push them to shove, they're like, well, here's why it's like, this is how I win, is so much more honest than
It's a huge just like side marker of people having to attach moral weight to everything they like.
Yes.
It's another version of that. Like, what I like cannot just be my preference. It has to be morally correct.
It has to be the right thing. Yeah, it can't just have a selfish valence to it.
Exactly. Well, and it's funny because, like, for me, Sekiro, I'm like, I think you and I pretty much align on terms of like what we like from these games, and the fact that Sekiro rates so high for me is sort of like when you don't like a genre, but then you list what your top 10 albums are, like a music genre, and like one of the albums in that top 10 is from the genre you say you don't like. I don't like Westerns, but The Searchers is one of my favorite films. And you're like, but wait, you don't like Westerns? Like, yeah, but like it's just good. It just hits. And that's kind of how I feel about Sekiro, where like I'm not as much of a character action person. It's definitely more of a character action game, but the rhythm got in me. You know what I mean? I felt the way that combat worked rewarded me in a way. In some ways, it reminds me of a game like there was a platformer called Grow Home that I reviewed for GameSpot about a decade ago now. That I'm not a big 3D platformer person, but that hit for me in a way that other things didn't. It had a very physicsy control scheme, and you're kind of like climbing all over the thing, all over the place. Felt very expressive in that way. And it was actually the thing with Sekiro is like it gave me what I would like to have gotten from things like Devil May Cry that have never hit for me. And those games seem fine. Like, I think if you love those games, awesome. I'm glad that they work for you. They've never really worked for me. And Sekiro is like, oh, I get to have a little bit of the character action fun that other people have because the rhythm was right for me. But I was also happy to see that Elden Ring found a huge audience because it confirmed, hey, there are people out there who will learn how this works. Don't be afraid of giving people an experience like this. And that's like a really broad category, right? Like things that are difficult, or things that ask them to learn about a world, or things that ask them to come to understand about your different interlocking systems, or whatever. You know, when you make something that's high quality, it's kind of a resilient thing, and it will find that audience. So I was pretty happy about that.
I was pleasantly surprised that Elden Ring broke out as well as it did. You know, especially because I had not paid too much attention to it pre-release. But like once I got it in my hands and saw like the shape of it and kind of like just felt how it was like, I don't know. It stands to reason a little bit. So like kind of the way that Sekiro kind of appealed to you, even though you're not really a character action person, but it appealed because it shaded Souls-like rhythm into character action kind of thing. Picture people who are not necessarily Soulsborne people who got into Elden Ring because they shaded, I mean, to me, a better version of open world kind of stuff, you know, Skyrim kind of appeal.
Which is like huge appeal, the dominant form of the AAA game in the last decade, right? People are familiar with it, are comfortable with it, and they got to see a version of it that is more, you know, it is the Skyrim version of it, which is like, I don't want to be over here right now. I'm going to go somewhere else, right? Instead of, let's say, like the GTA version, where it's like there are 6 missions that you can go to at a time. And I think that that kind of completely open-ended version maybe works better for something like completely open-ended is probably an overstatement. You know, I think Elden Ring is probably much more shaped like New Vegas or something, where there is a lot of soft guidance towards the right set of paths, but you can feel like, I'm gonna not do this right now, I'm gonna come back later, and that helps a lot for people. It
interfaces so interestingly with difficulty in the game, you know. So if things were putting if these esoteric systems were putting people off, you know, another thing is that challenge. And in the marketing of Elden Ring, something I noticed was that it felt like they had dialed back tons on the, like, you know, I don't need to have a girlfriend, Dark Souls fucks me every day t-shirt shit, you know?
Yes, 100%.
They're not really doing that
God.
embarrassing gamer trash about this, and this is a way of onboarding people onto these things, because I don't necessarily think, and I'd be curious if you agree, that Elden Ring is appreciably, actually, like, these bosses are easier than a lot of these other bosses. You just have more forms of approach and more things you can do.
Listen, like, I think that the early bosses, if you've never played this before, the way that attack timing gets played with is absolutely as hard as any early bosses, and maybe harder for any of the Souls games. The first time you fight Margaret, God, it's been so long. It's been, is that right? And you get, you know, it's a meme at this point, but like those like held attacks is, again, you're trusting your audience not to call bullshit on that and quit the game at that moment. But look how many people have done it. It's wild. Like, there is something about the way this game is made that I think a lot of people go, I can get it. I almost got it that time. And you're right that I don't think the actual bosses are any easier, but I do think that ability to bounce off of Margaret and be like, I'll come back. I'm going to go do more caves. I'm going to go just see what's canny. What.
Like, they give you that whole peninsula that is entirely for that.
Yes.
Like, here's tutorial 2. Peninsula. Go down and check that out.
Go check that out. It's not the way forward, but it's about as hard as the stuff is up here. So you can just go feel it out. And by the way, you'll get more abilities and more tools and stuff, but mostly you'll get the dodge timing down a little bit better because you'll just have had more experience. You'll feel through the menus a little bit more. You'll get a sense of who your character is as a build. You know, where do you want to put those points? Maybe, you know.
Well, and the first boss in that area that you're likely to find as part of a major landmark outside of a cave, that little guy down there in the castle, is also a melee focused, aggressive boss, similar to Margit, you know, with fewer ranged attacks, but kind of a similar thing. Like, it's really canny the way they do that.
Yeah, aggressive in a small arena. That Leonidas Begotten there.
Yes.
I mean, from a narrative point of view too. Like, okay, bounce and go down to Weeping Peninsula, where like nothing is hugely consequential, but you're going to get a lot of previews of bigger things that are going on.
Yeah, the themes are at work.
Yes.
Hey, what's going on in this place? Why are these people fighting each other? What happened here? And you start to get some of the most interesting quest lines begin there, right? Because you get the first Eyes quest on the way there, right? The
Hyetta,
and in general, is that also the route where you end up meeting the sorcerer trainer?
It's on the way
down there, and there's a good chance that you're going to bump into stuff that starts hinting at what the world is and how people are reacting to this crisis, and just in general, like you get a taste for what's to come in a bunch of different ways that I think are really rewarding. So that's a great bit. And I think in general this is also just part of the strategy for the whole game, is sort of like letting the line out a little bit more to give you more lore or more line to play with, to lure you in, basically. I think about something, and I mean that both narratively, mechanically, spatially. I think about the fact that I just played through Dark Souls 1, right, on Switch, like I'd mentioned, right, basically right before this, or within the year prior, and thinking about, okay, what are the how am I going to level up my weapons, right? How am I going to infuse my weapons? And the idea is just like, oh yeah, you can just like infuse your weapon whenever at a bonfire and this. You just try it out. Just try it out is such a relief. And that's for me, who understands how infusions work. Me who understands what raw means. Do you know what I mean? But for even like, Patrick Klepek, who I used to work with at Waypoint, now again it's at Remap, is someone who like, maybe he streamed through Dark Souls 1 for Giant Bomb back in the day. And I think, the chat was like, oh, you should go down the pyromancy route, and you take this axe, it's like that build, right? Like, okay, you should infuse this axe with this. But beyond that, I don't think has ever really engaged with infusion in these games, despite having played all of them, because it's such a scary thing. And that's, I think, a lot of players do that. It's the same thing of like, it's an extended version of, I have 99 potions at the end of the game because I don't want to spend any of my potions, where it's like, I only have so much, I'll level it up. I'll put the shards in and make it go from 1 to 10, but I don't want to risk making it magic if I don't understand how that will how that will actually play out in terms of damage. And here you just go try it out. Just go try it out for a little bit.
It does so much work. Like the whetstone system, like doing that, it also gives you a meaningful reward. A meaningful thematic reward. It does a thing that is one of my favorite things that I think FromSoft is as good, if not better, than most devs at, which is having an item do multiple bits of work. So like you can go get the specific whetstone. The whetstone is related to the place you found it. So it's telling you something about where it's located. It's also a meaningful gameplay reward for overcoming a challenge. You got to this hard to reach place and got this thing. And then it also allows you more expressive play for the next area you go into. It's doing so much with so little in a really fascinating way.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's the stuff that's just like, getting to Leyendell for the first time, getting to like I'm sure you've had these conversations a million times, right? But like the transporting chests that put you in places that you are not ready to be in yet, but which you kind of want to be in once you get the taste, these stupid big bugs that are crushing me with what I will learn to become Rot Thread, one of the best abilities to bring into the final boss battle for me personally. I'm going to get through this stupid cave. I'm going to find out where I am. Oh my God, this is where I am.
Am I on a different planet?
Yeah,
no,
100%.
Actually, the map just got bigger, and I am.
Yeah.
The way the map unfolds. This is the thing, right? It's like I'm sure you had a lot of these like general conversations about Elden Ring because of the way you're doing the season, but all that stuff is just true, right?
Yeah,
like, all that stuff does just work.
It's undeniably cool. It's hard to argue with.
Yeah. And again, is a nice thing to know works for a general or a more general audience than the niche audience that I think a lot of people convince themselves that these games were fundamentally for. But
Yeah.
people like fantasy fiction. People like Game of Thrones, and obviously there's the obvious George R. R. Martin, like direct George R. R. Martin connection. But even beyond that, people like metal music and the art that goes on metal covers. People like RPGs. People like action games. Like, this stuff isn't, I know that sometimes there's joy in drawing the boundary around a thing and saying, I have stumbled into being the sort of person for whom this is juicy goodness.
Yeah.
But also it's good to remember that, like, we're part of a collective whole of humanity that actually shares a bunch of tastes, and that, like, the taste of that motherfucker has beaten me into the ground 10 times, I'm going to figure out how to win this fight, is actually a really widely
Pretty universal.
enjoyed,
Yeah, like fairly universal.
Yeah, I like to get better at the stuff that I do. I like to look at really pretty things. I like to look at colors. Like, I like to arrive in the Northwest. What's the name of the region in the Northwest? That's the autumnal.
Mount Gelmir.
Before that,
Liurnia.
yeah.
The autumnal. Yeah, Altus.
Altus, the Altus Plateau, which. Oh, the way I got there the first time, I went what I guess is the back route, the caves, the mine.
Yeah, I went up the Coward's Path.
It's called the Coward's Path, which I got there at the end of a night of playing. It was like 3 or 4 a.m. And I was like, I'll just do this little mine. I've done a bunch of these mines before. Let me just go in, clear out the mine. I'll fight whatever stupid boss is at the bottom. I'll get a weapon I probably won't use, but, like, I think will be cool. Who knows? And then an hour later, the queen mother of the bat women is yelling at me, and I'm trying to figure out how to get past it without falling off and without being overwhelmed, and which summon should I bring into this, and okay, and then you get past that, and then, like, yeah, you have to fight the big lizard, the fire lizard, which there are maybe one or two too many of as bosses in the game or whatever. Yeah. But that was I don't care. I do, you know what? I do not care. Yeah. I know that's a popular talking point. It doesn't hit me like that.
Sometimes it feels like people are searching for a thing. Sometimes with that
we
talking
live in a
point,
world
because
where people run the same raids and MMOs every week. Why am I going to complain about
that's
having
video
the same
games
in
some ways? And yeah, I also think the point you were making earlier about this being a more universal experience and appealing to a lot of people. A lot of times when something is not doing that, it can feel a little bit like artificial.
Yeah,
like a lot of these elements were present in previous games. They were just obfuscated just slightly, and there's a feeling a little bit to me that Elden Ring is FromSoft maybe understanding that, like, there's not as much value in obfuscation for obfuscation's sake. We can embrace this kind of universality. I don't know if that's the right word, but this kind of universalness of this on their end and on the fan end. Which is nice.
But it doesn't feel too compromised because you still have things like Ronnie's Quest, where, like, whole swaths of the map are optional, right? But they just give you a little bit of a nudge by having a quest giver, send you that way, by giving you a crew to rock with, right? Yeah. And it still feels like you have stumbled into, optional areas, painted world, etc. Right?
Definitely. Or the What are the brothers? The Belmont brothers. They're not actually the Belmont brothers.
The Dialos and
Dialos.
There's Dialos and then there's D and D's brother.
Yeah, not D and D's brother. Dialos and whoever Dialos' brother is, who you kill for the volcano.
Juno Hoslow.
The Hoslows. Yeah. Which is just like a great little story that I almost completely missed because the person he tells you to go find in Liurnia, is that right? Liurnia,
he talks about his servant who disappears
and like
run away.
And I was like, I just had, the map is big, right? You know what I mean? It took me 80 hours to eventually go find her, and then thankfully I got to finish that arc, which of course wraps back into Jartown and or Jarville or Jarburg, and that whole arc, that's the type of obfuscation I'm really happy with, because it means that you do feel rewarded when you find stuff. But core stuff doesn't need to be obfuscated for fear of scaring people away,
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, I
a
finished
real
going up
kind
that mine, and I see the autumnal stuff, and I just like colors. Do you know what I mean? And then, of course, the Lanciax, the dragon showed up and instantly killed me. But it was still a beautiful moment.
Yeah. I love this kind of democratization of FromSoft of Souls things. Speaking, kind of moving a little bit into kind of narrative stuff, which we were talking about a little bit how it tells the narrative, but in the narrative in itself, what are your kind of major takeaways in terms of what this game does differently to get that across, and what it's maybe saying differently than, because FromSoft is a company that has a lot of repeated themes, right? They have some pet issues.
Yeah, I think that's 100% true. I mean, you have to laugh when you look at the upcoming Armored Core stuff, where it's just like, I know Dark Souls. This is Pretzels is the same.
There's fire.
Pretzels and cinders.
Yeah,
Pretzels is the same. What is the segment? Yeah.
What is this segment? But there is a difference I find in Elden Ring. Like I think one of my favorite things about this game is how it encounters the same. It begins at the same dilemma, right? Which is like, the way the world has been, not so good. What do we do about this, right? We're in a moment of crisis and decline. What is the response? And this is a broad generalization, but generally speaking, the Souls games have said either we restart the clock and sustain ourselves while resigning ourselves to the mediocrity of hierarchical living, or of continuing to live in a system we know is doomed to fail again, or we step into a world of chaos and danger and darkness. And there's variation there, but that's generally the vibe, right? Bloodborne, I think, changes that a little bit. There are some other opportunities there. Oh wow, what if I leaned in all of the way and became a squid, right? What if we that texturally is different than Lord of Darkness type endings, right?
Yeah.
But what I love about Elden Ring is there are 6 endings. I mean, I know that 3 or 4 of them are just the same ending with color shaders and different dialogue and tonally a little bit different. But there is much more variety in how do I want to remake the world? What is the core thing that must change here? I mean, even the versions of it that are about restoring what came before, or I guess you could say Golden Masks, which is about, going kind of cutting out the intermediary between the world and I guess the Elden Beast, or the guy, I forget who is Golden Mask standing in for here.
The greater will.
The greater will. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, just fulfilling a truer version of the promise.
But even that is a change, right? And I'm so much more interested in a version of this story that is not just we're stuck in this eternal recursion, which I like a lot, but I think it's been done to death, and I think it's been done really well by their previous games. I mean, I thought Dark Souls 2 did it really well, which is why when Dark Souls 3 did it again, I was kind of like, we kind of did the best version of this in that last game. We got Vendrick walking in circles. You're not going to get better than that. It's going to be, I'm really hard pressed. So coming to this, I kind of expected we would just get that again. And instead we got these kind of different, and they're not even always ideologically opposed. It's just that the Rot Eater is kind of ideologically opposed to everybody, but even the Rot Eater and his vision of bringing everyone down into suffering and grossness with him and vileness is different than what is the flame burn it all down god's name?
The frenzied flame.
The frenzied flame. Yeah. And those are different positions fundamentally, right? And that is different than the death, the death cult one. I truly should have just played this game.
Yeah, the Dung Eater,
no, not Dung Eater. Not
Fiat.
Exactly. These are all different perspectives on how the world might be remade. Here are things we want to change about it. And I think that's just a much more interesting space. My one complaint is that Volcano Manor doesn't get to have a chance to be in the endings. This is my little pet thing is the first time you roll in there, and what is her name?
Riker?
Tannis. Tanith, rather.
Tanith with her big bodyguard standing next to her, the Crucible Knight next to her, which is just like an all-time image. But her laying out to you that, like, the point of what this faction is have y'all played a Souls game before? They want us to go out there and stab each other in the back and get stronger to repair the system that's broken. That's bullshit. That's evil. That's terrible. So here's what we're going to go do. Go stab people in the back who are trying to complete this game. Who are trying, like, not literally, because it's not a PvP faction, right? There's no PvP
but who are narratively going for the Elden Ring to restore the order.
Yeah. And not for the reason that Gideon wants to stop you at the end, right? Not because of investment in the order, but because the entire thing is such a cynical nightmare to be part of. Love that, and maybe in that way, it's important that they don't have an ending on their own.
The ending for that is turning off the game.
You're right.
Like the ending for that is you don't beat it.
You don't beat it. You complete the mission set, and then you turn off the game, and you go, "Yeah, that's it."
Yeah, walk away. Yep. Yeah, my Elden Ring never. I'm not playing your game.
Exactly. I reject you.
I will not be grist for your mill.
Exactly.
The idea that like 1/6 of the endings are status quo as opposed to half of the endings.
This is exactly
which is the previously, like, the idea, and with that comes a lot of like player empowerment over that narrative. Like there's a sense of inevitability that isn't all of the other games, I feel like, which is what Dark Souls 2 endings did, was like, if you choose the Age of Light, if you choose the Age of Dark, these are cycles though, it's going to come around. So that's why pre-Scholar Dark Souls 2, the ending was the same.
Yep.
You sit on the throne, whatever you want to have happens. You did it.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. And that's why the Aldia ending is so awesome, because it's like, what if you didn't play the game? What if you walked away and did a third way option? This is saying, well, okay, let's allow for that. Here are a bunch of different alternatives to that.
And let's dig into it a little bit. Yeah, exactly. What are those alternatives actually like? So that's one thing about the narrative for me. The other big thing is just more material, which is you can so tell that they had. And again, I'm not a big George R.R. Martin fan. I'm not like a Game of Thrones guy. I sometimes think I should become one, right? And with lots of caveats, right? But you can tell that they had the material and that the plane wasn't being flown in the air in the same way. And I don't mean that they like implemented what he wrote, because I'm so certain what they did was take this big backstory about all these families and all this lineage and these gods and then turn them on their head in really unique ways, right? They've talked about what that process was like, right? That he wrote a bunch of background material and historical material that then they jumped way into the future timeline about, right? But there is something so different about learning about the school in Liurnia. Again, is that the right name for the place?
Yes. Raya Lucaria.
Raya Lucaria, thank you. And then going there and it being real, right? Getting a spell that says Raya Lucaria. And then you go to Raya Lucaria. And by the way, before you get there, you meet a guy who dropped out or who kind of flunked out. And, can we get him back in somehow? Oh, no, maybe that wasn't the best thing to do for him. Poor guy. That sense of the places in the game are in the game hits in a different way than learning about Izalith and then realizing later that, like, they kind of had to invent a lot of that to fill in what the game design required. And they did a great job of doing that in the most evocative and cool way they could. But I think that it contributes to some of the ethereal nature of those games, the sense that there are distant places. And obviously there's some stuff that does still have that, right? I think in Dark Souls 1, you're thinking about Honor Londo a lot, and then you get there, and that's a big, incredible moment. But all of Elden Ring is like
there's a lot more of that.
There's a lot more of it. And I think that is, as someone whose job is to write video games and do world building, I hope that lesson is learned by more developers, that like having that stuff ahead of time lets you make a game that feels like vivid, and it lets you tease stuff in a more naturalistic way. It feels like the world is flourishing, even though, I mean, this is a world on the brink of utter, catastrophe, permanent
It feels way more alive than previous.
It feels way more alive.
Games I've done,
100%. And it doesn't mean you can't still have wild, weird stuff that no one expects, like the witches dancing on the hills, or the
Midsummer Village.
The Midsummer Village. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I mean,
it's kind of like. Go ahead, Cole.
Oh, it's narrative detail and, just for lack of a better word, lore, as not as like spackle or filigree, but as like actual like lattice or structure or even like scaffolding, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. It's a very similar version to what we were talking about gameplay wise, where you have your your hidden things, your painted world things, and then the things that you're actually on the path of. You have your Ronnie's quest and you have your main quest thing. It is a real all things to all people approach to that. Like you can do the clearly shown their work foreshadowing world building, and then you can also have the left turns. There's 100%. No reason not to have both. It's the porque no los dos of games.
Well, they both make each other better, because like there's a bunch of foreshadowing here. When something surprises you, like that amplifies it.
100%. And also
by contrast,
you can be really vague about something. The one for me there is the Frenzied Flame merchants, the nomadic merchant like moment of being like, hey, y'all are here? What are you doing here? Oh, this puts a lot of stuff into perspective for me. Now I understand some of those things that you were saying for the last 30 hours while I was bumping into you in very strange places.
Oh, wait, America sucks.
I mean, and I think that's, I think that the God stuff is so good. And I think that the stuff in Dark Souls, the stuff in Souls has been schematically good, but not necessarily good as dialogue or good as the Gwynniverse, the family, like that kind of that sort of celestial body, that pantheon is interesting. I think there's really cool stuff to write about all of them and to think about all of them, and Gwendolyn and Guinevere, and like, okay, what's going on with these characters? I don't think any of it holds a candle to the weird machinations of Radagon and Marika and Ronnie and the whatever the clash between the various demigods is called from the kind of the moment before the game begins. Not the moment, but the years before the war between
the
shattering, right? That stuff is all, I think, really potent and is felt in the world again, right? That like when you go to Caelid and it's like, oh, right, this place was ruined because gods fought here. It didn't used to be like this, and you can get that sense of it. And that's not to say that there isn't stuff that feels like it's dead-ended or like it didn't land. Again, like part of me feels like the Volcano Manor stuff feels unfinished, even though it's some of my favorite stuff. But and obviously there's DLC coming to fill in some of these gaps around some of the lesser, the maybe stuff that's a little unclear still about what is the Michaela, is that right?
Michaela,
not Michaela. Michaela. And so like it's not that having all that material meant that they were perfect or complete. It's never a complete work, but like I think that having all of that allowed them to make so much more stuff feel tied together and real in terms of narrative design. So great.
Yeah. Agreed.
Also, you get a horse and you can jump, and like I am a simple man. I like simple
made of stone. I like
a goat horse who can do a little jump.
It makes the little sleigh bell.
Yeah. Is it a pain to did I never engage with healing it because I don't want to put it on a
I would die before giving my pet a roa berry, but I still love him.
Exactly.
Yeah. I'm not put on this earth to serve Torment.
But counter argument to not counter argument, but like meanwhile, the summon system, not the NPC summon system, the ashes,
spirit summons,
spirit summons, things like I rushed. What's the stat that lets you summon them? The more powerful ones.
It's a mind. Like it usually does. Yeah, usually takes MP.
It's MP. That's what it was. It's like you need high MP because I found Luatel the Headless,
Yes.
I want to say,
Yeah.
fairly early. And I was like, she seems sick.
Oh, you went down the hard hero's grave.
Again, though, no, Lutel is down in Weeping Peninsula.
Oh, okay.
They give you Lutel really early, which is another thing that makes Weeping Peninsula amazing.
Yeah,
they give you this thing to work for.
Which is also the same thing they do at the Leonine whatever boss, right? So you get that 6 swords. It's like, I can't use this, but I can start building towards it, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's part of why Weeping Peninsula is so good, right? We already said this, is like, it gives you that preview and it leaves you with some threads to start following. Hey, I have a mind, or I have an int trainer who's going to give me more spells. So I can start building towards that. I have this, I have that, I have this. I think is that also where you get some of the gravity stuff is down there. Is that right?
I mean, you get a preview, like, because you get that meteor field up on one of those peninsulas over to the east. Yeah,
that is what it is. But yeah, so like I rushed Lutel, I rushed Mind to be able to summon Lutel, who is like not a great summon by the end of the game, but in the early and mid game is a beast. And I have videos of her absolutely saving me from disastrous situations left and right, tanking. She's a really good tank summon. And whatever I wanted from the horse, whatever was missing from Torrent, I found with the spirit summon stuff, picking which ones I liked, thinking about different builds for them, not builds for them, but thinking about how which ones I would want depending on where my build was at various points of the game,
It's a brilliant addition to the game, I think. I love being able to supplement my own build.
Yeah,
it's a sea change similar to like Dragon Quest 1 to Dragon Quest 2, adding party members. You start thinking about what can supplement your character as opposed to just thinking of a PC.
People know this from me. I'm a big Dragon's Dogma person, and Dragon's Dogma's but a huge part of it is the pawn system, which is about these NPCs that are party members that kind of develop quirks and different playing habits. Your primary one is modeled after you, what you do. So like if you're the one who's always like looting things in the middle of combat, they'll start doing that too, and you'll be punished for your laziness and your poor role modelship. And so having that style of like, who do I want to bring with me into this one is something I was preconditioned to like, and leveling them up and thinking about that. And truly, Tish saved me in the final fight. I had, I just could not get the Elden Beast down. My final build was like, the arc for me was heavy with role play. I very much started as what are the two cleric-y classes at the beginning?
There's an assassin,
I think that's the one.
The clerical assassin, and then just the priest. I think.
Yeah, the Inquisitor.
I went with the clerical. The Inquisitor. Did that for a long time. Started down the Ronnie path. Switched to doing and found Moonveil, which. What do you say?
They haven't nerfed it, so they want it to be that good.
Right, that's exactly it. Right, if they wanted it to be worse, it would be worse by now. And I know they nerfed it a little bit, but like Moonveil is still Moonveil. They knew they were creating the next generation of the Moonlight Greatsword, right? Like they knew that they were trying to they had to, right? And so I played that for a long time to the degree that I was like, I have to stop playing this. It's too good. I'm having a lot of fun, but it's not the sort of fun I want to have. So I ended up changing that build, and this is towards this is like my final third of the game. I was like, what do I want to do? I think I'll go Blood. Also, I had finished the Sellen quest line, and I was like, what? Yeah. I'm gonna get off this magic train. I see where it goes. I see where it goes. Yeah. Well, I'm not going to mess with the stars anymore. That seems
a little bit of an eye opener.
Yeah, you might say. And so I was like, I'll try Blood, and they hadn't fixed the blood weapon stuff yet, right? With the dual stat scaling, where it's arcane, right? Yes. Where it's like the arcane wasn't counting towards the weapon scaling at that time. But I was like, well, there are some weapons that work because it's single stat scaling. And also they're just cool. Rivers of Blood is just a cool weapon, and even just raw leveling it up makes it competitive. Let me do that. Let me go do some content and see what it is. And of course I went to the blood zone, but I didn't know where I was going. And so with a blood build, I went into what's that guy's name? Is it
Mohgwyn Palace?
Yeah. And I did that section, and I beat him, and I didn't understand the mechanic either. I just tanked the damage from his like countdown attack.
Yep.
I did not realize you can totally do it, and I did it, and I beat him. And the next day or the day after, they patched the weapons.
Oh,
and so in my mind, I just need everyone to know you're welcome. I became the new Lord of Blood, and I changed how the blood weapons work. And instantly that build just worked then. You know what I mean? I was just super competitive. Rivers of Blood is extremely powerful with that build. And I played that through the end of the game, except it was not good against the Elden Beast. And so what I ended up doing is going back to the one of the early curved greatswords that you get from one of the jails.
The Bloodhound one.
The Bloodhound one, which has that great dash back, dash forward, which I played hours of that game without knowing there was a second attack on it, the dash forward like follow-up hit. So I went to that, and I went to Rot Threads, which procs a bunch on Elden Beast because it passes to such a big body. And even then I couldn't quite get it. And then I have footage of Tish saving my life. It's going into another damage phase, and Tish shows up and shoots the whatever big wave, the sonic boom, the evil sonic boom into the air, and catches it just as it's entering its damage phase from across the map. Like Hail Mary shot, saves my life. And it's like, yep, it was worth them investing in the Spirit Ashes. It was worth them putting that system in for that moment for me, because it felt unlike a moment I'd had yet in a Souls game before, right? There's summons, there's NPC summons, but there's not the sort of summons that have unique animations the way that this character had. This is someone who kills gods. I'm summoning the spirit of a god killer. You know?
No, there's nobody better to tag in for that fight.
Exactly.
She's finishing the job.
Yeah, exactly. She should have done this years ago.
She's been off in Alaska doing mushers. And he finally brought her back.
I brought her back. We need for one more job.
We did back to the old me.
Yeah, exactly. 100%. That's her story. I'm actually I'm a footnote in her story. You have to go read the book about her.
Yeah, you freed her from jail.
Yeah, exactly.
You did a jailbreak to free the god killer.
And put her to work.
Yeah. Kind of it is fun to talk about, and it begets playing it in a dangerous way. Like I'm in my third playthrough, which I'm doing to get ready for the DLC, and I'm like, I'll do that tonight. Just to kind of wrap things up on like kind of light note, rapid fire, favorite boss, favorite zone of it.
Favorite boss, favorite zone.
Just your gut. Go with the gut.
Oh, this is hard. It's actually hard. I'm going to look at a list of zones. Can I just look at a list of zones really quick? Because it's just been so long. It's just been so long that I need to see that. Okay, I have a list of zones. I think getting to Leyendell, that's the capital, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Getting there and being like, this feels like a city. They've never made a city that feels like a city like this before.
Yeah.
The street layouts, the tiers, when you get down into it and you're like, oh, there's like districts to this place.
Yep.
And there are alleyways and it's still a Souls level, but like it felt more like a city to me than anything had previously felt. So I think that's my go-to on that. And then bosses, Jesus, there's so many.
Yeah.
Malekith. Because I tend to be someone who can put together the big twists in things. I did not put it together that he was the beast guy.
Garunk. Yeah.
Yeah. I did, and I was like, "No, you're my boy." I thought I wasn't going to have to fight you. And that fight is also kind of fun and turned out to be like challenging in the right way for me. I ended up really liking that. And then my follow up to that, or my runner up, is the Hoslow you have to go kill.
Juno
for the Volcano Banner,
isolated
because
shack.
I had the Moonveil build at that point, and he was the only thing I couldn't beat with it. He was just tuned perfectly with those dual whips to be just out of range, to be just fast enough to outdraw me. And that felt so good. It felt like the game had hard countered me. And I'm sure that there was like some stuff I could have done I would have won that fight eventually, you know, but I loved that sense of being like, good, this thing that feels OP still has a weakness. And it's like someone who can move a little faster and still hit from a long range at me felt fantastic. And also like he lived up to his reputation.
Well, I was just going to say that it's so weird because they send you to fight all these guys and a lot of them are just, you know, kind of chumps. You go through and there's this legendary guy and I'm like this legendary guy this guy ain't legendary. But he's actually the real deal. He's tough.
He's the real deal. 100%.
Excellent. Thank you so much for joining us. Remind me where people can find you online.
I'm going to give you the newsletters. I didn't say that earlier. Clockworkworlds.com. Clockwork like clockwork, worlds like worlds.com. That's the place. And I'm going to do a post in the next couple of days, I think, there that's just kind of like, where can you find me in general? That way people can find me in general as they flee Twitter and every other nightmare ship on the internet, you know?
We're all leaving X.
Yeah,
it's
God, I won't say
it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing.
It's so embarrassing. It's so embarrassing.
Yeah, I know.
Especially when you read the PayPal stuff.
I vow this will be the biggest bank in the world. I say.
Cool.
Cool, man.
Yep.
Cool, Sephiroth. Cool vowing. Wait to vow on Twitter. Thank you so much, Austin. We really appreciate this. This has been awesome.
Such a joy to be here. How many more episodes are you doing for the season? Do you know? Can I ask that? Is that secret knowledge?
It's not secret knowledge, but we don't know exactly how long. We're pretty far into it. We don't know exactly how many episodes the Helling Tree will be.
Right.
That's the last major area we have before the end game. So we have the Snowfield and the Helling Tree.
Yes.
And there's lots of stuff to talk about there. So there's might be
lots of stuff to talk about there, and especially Snowfield, where it's like, all right,
there's stuff I haven't fought. There's so much stuff I haven't done there.
I still feel so big. It's big and it seems empty, but it's actually not empty. And
I've been real surprised making the outline for that. Like, oh no, I totally did not see this. I did not go in this cave. I did not. Yeah.
There's a unique rune bear there that has a different moveset and texture than anyone else, which I did not know.
Wow.
Yeah, has a couple different moves. I just found that out from a YouTube. It's one of those mimic ones. It's a bunch of the nobles are burying a guy in snow. He's up to his waist, and the guy they're burying in snow turns into like the hardest rune bear in the game. So I had no idea. So don't know exactly how many. And then obviously we're waiting for DLC. And then we got some so there's some mod stuff and things like that. The manga. There's some stuff we're gonna talk about kind of ancillary wise in the interim.
Soundtrack stuff.
Ooh, exciting.
Do a soundtrack episode.
To hear that. God, that final track. I mean, like I'm actually lower on this as a soundtrack than some of the previous games, but the Radagon fight track, which is the main menu track,
I love that they saved that.
The first time I hit it, I don't know that I ever popped so hard for a song in a Souls game. So
goosebumps.
Yeah, it's excellent.
What a nice guy.
Always floors me. Just really, really nice, very smart dude. And you can listen to him talk about games. Very infectious enthusiasm.
Yes. Yeah. And we're really grateful that he extended us the time and was so generous with that.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's great. That's phenomenal. With the SekiroDubi episode here or interview, this was through email, so we're going to be reading them. Just imagine our voices, whatever their voice is like, even though they don't talk on generally on YouTube. So use your imagination.
People sometimes wonder why we do these this way. Not every Souls creator puts their voice out there. Not comfortable being on a microphone, and they still have insights that we think are worth sharing. And this one, I don't know, I was fascinated reading this. Basically sent us like a 3-page long Google document, like outlining their process and stuff.
That was the stuff that I was trying to aim for in the questions, because earlier when I was talking about us shoring up things we don't know, like, fuck me if I know how to data mine. I don't know how to get this stuff. But it is endlessly interesting. And it is so cool to be part of a community where there are people who are doing the things that we can't do. It's very communal in a way that I really like.
Yeah, and not just doing that themselves, but also like SekiroDubi's output is a collaboration a lot of the time, either through art or through translation. It is folks working together all the way down, and that rules. The Souls community kind of goes through different movements over the course of different games, and even over the life cycle of when one game releases and waiting for the other one. But this is one of the coolest things that has kind of popped up, especially around like the technical side.
Yes. So let's get into it. This is, in case you're looking up this person, you should 100% subscribe. It is spelled SekiroDubi, SekiroDubi. I say SekiroDubi is how I say that. There's not a voiced thing, so I'm pretty sure I did that.
Just wanted to clarify that it's DUBI, so people don't think that we're talking to, hey man, come on over here. It's the 70s, like the Dubi as in brothers,
like the Dubi brothers, or Dubai as in the
principality.
Walker. How many people were alive in Dubai when you arrived? The Walker. It's that's not the intent. So I'll go ahead and get us started here. So they started out with kind of giving us a baseline here for illustrative purposes. They bring up a particular video that we should go and watch, and everyone should watch this for reference.
Yes.
Saint Trina and the Red-Eyed Merchants.
Yeah.
And we'll kind of summarize it here, but it's worth a watch.
Yes. Yeah. So what SekiroDubi had done over the course of a while, and when we get into their actual response, we're going to be talking about the kind of the process involved in arriving at this. But they discovered this long quest line involving Merchant Kale, who you find at that church right outside of the starting area.
The one who teaches you how to snap.
Yep. But him and his brothers, these other merchants, and their relationship to the cursed flame, which is, we know that they are somehow related to the frenzied flame. What is kind of cut out and not obscured, what was present in an alternative timeline of a different release of Elden Ring before they decided to scrap it, was that Saint Trina was more foregrounded and was very explicitly related to these people. Saint Trina, dominion over sleep, used to sing them a lullaby to quell their madness.
Yes. Yeah. However, this kind of got disturbed because somebody is kind of jostling and exciting the flame.
Yeah.
Making the merchants smudge and blend together.
Yeah.
So the songs that they play, the merchants all play that stringed instrument, are played to calm the flame.
Yeah.
There.
I love that the merchants are like smudging and blending together like that, because it leans in so heavily on something that is present in other outer god infections, which is that the god assuming control, like there's some kind of like hive mind going on, like their individual identities are being elided. Such a cool detail.
Well, it's really clever too in terms of gameplay stuff, because they're all functionally the same and have the same, very similar or the same models.
Yeah.
To, having a repeating merchant character and then having a lore reason why they're, kind of becoming an omni character is cool.
Yeah.
So Kale gives over Saint Trina's crystal ball, symbol of Saint Trina, and the cradle song, so we can go into the dreams of anyone sleeping and capture their dream mist.
Yeah.
And
this is Pokemon, but with dreams.
Yes. AKA Gengar. You would find sleeping creatures around the world, use this item, making this kind of bestiary, and then you would sell them to the merchants. Your reward would have been a perfume bottle after selling 10 of them. So this is how you used to be able to get perfume bottles. And if you started attacking the brothers, they will get together collectively, that you are the thief, and start fighting you with musical attacks.
Yeah.
So they would share like a rumor, like a whisper network. And when you showed up, they would become hostile generally. This is all real cool shit that was originally planned. So keep that in mind. And then we asked Sekiro about the process of coming to that.
Right. Yeah. The process, codes, and tools kind of that directs them to which margins to kind of press into. Which yarns to pull. Yes.
And so we asked them about that. Their tools and everything, and they said, and we'll pass back and forth. This is their detailed responses. They say a game like Elden Ring has a lot of systems, each of them with their respective assets. So, for example, there's the game maps where NPCs and enemies are placed, along with buildings, objects like bonfires, and so on. One thing they then do is use a script that they wrote to scan all the maps and see which entities are unused or refer to a quest file that doesn't exist.
Yeah. And along with that, and on the converse side, they say, I wrote a script to list all quest files and then compare them to those used in the maps, kind of bring a difference on related to what's used and what's not. They continue, with this method, I can find which ones are unused. Then I can follow that thread to see where it takes me. Same thing happens with dialogue. Once I find unused text, then I try to figure out which quest file was using said dialogue, trying to understand where and how it was cut, and so on.
Yeah. So similar to this was a really interesting point I really liked. Similar, we've oftentimes, and since the beginning of the show, described the experience of playing these games as archaeology. Like that's the metaphor we use. They say, so the whole process ends up being like an archaeology game, trying to unearth things by following whatever data remains in the game files. For most of it, I ended up writing programs that kind of automate the process of finding what quest files are unused or which dialogue lines, so on. Same to reverse the unused dialogue IDs, which are like random, and try to see which dialogue ID they point to. Then again, I also just follow the thread of said ID.
Yeah. And this is great. I love them talking about the tools that they make or had to make in order to process this data that is very loosely correlated, from the dump, because not really a way to do it manually. Like, I don't know, Control F.
Yeah.
And then I broke out, they had a long description of how they do this, kind of going into the science, as they say, about how these IDs work. Since the game does not just like present something and say like, hey, Kale's quest line. Doesn't say that, and then Kale says it's not presented narratively. They give this example of a file that is called T 896,000. Okay. And then they identify like what those signifiers are. So like 800 is Kale, the NPC. 90 is a variation on that NPC. And then 6,000 is just an identifier for like the whole world. So like when this flag is active, when this file is called, Kale is present somewhere in the world.
Yeah. They're reading code.
Yeah.
That's so cool. Then they use community tools to read the contents of the quest files to see the quest flags that track their actions. So the flags place an NPC or an event at a location, such as some coordinates that they would have here. And these are broken out the same way. Yeah. A specific location, a specific event in a specific map.
Right.
And since this flag is in the Kale quest file, that means at some point Kale is at North Agil Lake because of the location here.
Yeah, the coordinates that are present in the long string of numbers. So Kale was not initially. You would not find him at that church. Kale was initially over by the lake when you begin this quest. Right.
Yep.
And these nested connections and the correlations between unused dialogue IDs and such kind of build out and form this entire puzzle.
Yes. And that is the full restoration of this. That whole process is what led to that video we described earlier, which again, everyone should watch. They go on to say, of course, there are more details in the process, but no need to bore everybody with every single detail. Smiley emoji. we then asked about the shift from making a channel about challenge runs to focusing on Elden Ring content. What specifically about Elden Ring brought this up? This is because I'd been following this channel for a while, previously focused on challenge runs, but then became one of the leading voices in cut content.
Yeah. So they say, my main interest has always been to, quote, break the game, any game, to test the limits of what the engine could do, try to find glitches, skips, or plain ways to be overpowered as early as possible. So in my channel, there used to be a lot of content about that. And this is great because in my mind, challenge run content and cut content could, like, they're pretty, like, diametrically opposed. One feels about skill and execution and a little bit of technical knowledge, and the other feels more about like interpretation or whatever. But like, this is kind of a commonality between those that I would not have thought about. Did not think
they're
about.
all about finding the bounding box.
Yes.
Like pushing up against the dark to see where the barriers are. They go on, then the Elden Ring network test came out and it immediately hooked me in. I wanted to know more about Elden Ring since there was almost no official info to go by. As I kept finding interesting things about Elden Ring, a friend kept telling me, you need to actually make videos explaining what you do here, because otherwise it's hard to understand those videos out of context. So at one point I found out about the unusual sleep mechanic for Elden Ring. I got in touch with Lance McDonald and we decided to make a video together about that mechanic, trying to restore it and so on. I guessed then it was about time that I put some sort of effort into actually editing the video, like my friend said, since Lance was going to reference it in his video.
Yeah, there you see
Lance
that
McDonald,
collaboration.
Another stalwart of this this specific thing. Its current quest has been Bloodborne 60 FPS and has gotten that running on emulator and such.
Nice. Yeah. They continue. After that, after working with Lance, I kind of tried to improve my videos step by step. Still, video production is not my forte, nor something I enjoy, but I keep publishing videos with the hopes that the content itself is interesting enough for the Elden Ring community. Otherwise, much of those discoveries would die unknown.
Yeah. Yep. And they go on to say, I am happy that today many of the big Elden Ring channels like Vadividya, Smotown, and others have showcased their content because their goal has always been that the community gets to see and enjoy the content.
Yeah.
So, happen to be a small part of that because I would like exposure.
Yeah. And keep doing it because it is interesting. Yeah. Yeah. We also asked, related to this process and their interest specifically in Elden Ring, if they had any interest in, making videos, kind of doing something similar with previous Farum games. And they say, regarding previous games, I'm not interested in restoring content. I think that there's great people already doing that. Speaking of which, big shout out to YouTuber Illusory Wall, because his videos inspired me to look deeper into FromSoft games.
Yeah, and we're already very, very partisan. Proud member of Illusory Wall's Patreon, and that man is a minor miracle. Yeah, does great work.
Yeah, so. One of the best to play the game.
Yeah. We asked about their favorite or most surprising cut content that they had found. They said, I think the whole saga of Kale St. Trina plus Gilbert and Vike is the most interesting, specifically because the set of linked NPCs with alternate locations, alternate lore, and so on confirms that there was a different version of Elden Ring that was planned and discarded for what we have today. Some of it survives in some item descriptions in 1.0, the Elden Ring Blu-ray version.
Yeah. And kind of go into talking about that 1.0 version because this is often held up as like an original intent or something there. They say there is the belief that these alternate lore descriptions were, quote, wrong English translations. But as we kept digging with the community, we saw a constellation of alternate lore that was spread around items that weren't up to date when the game got released on Blu-ray. Most of it was found in Asian translations of the game, like Chinese or Korean, but also surprisingly in Brazilian Portuguese from the network test.
While they go on, while I didn't go into full detail about what my video restoration about Gilbert and the God of Vengeance, I showed in that video how these NPCs were linked together: Kale, St. Trina, Vike, Gilbert, and the old lore as seen in some item descriptions and alternative NPC locations and names. There's a link, the Ultimate Elden Ring Cut Content documentary, which I've watched and is great. They go on. So this quest, together with those that are linked to it, like the Kale St. Trina mentioned before, tell us about an alternate version of Elden Ring with alternate lore and story points that got discarded at some point during development.
Yeah. We should talk about Gilbert, Vike, and that God of Vengeance just a little bit.
We should give an overview. At some point, I still want to do the Elden Ring cut content.
Yes, we ought to.
Full episode. Because those are some of my favorite that we've ever done.
Yeah.
On the show.
But just relating those characters and Radon, having a little bit more kind of explanation of, a little bit of what was going on with Radon before the shattering.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then the question I was most excited to get the answer to, because I think that this is a question that you and I have to contend with in what we do as well, which is basically, we asked how they feel about cut content and its analysis, how it falls in the overall picture of getting Elden Ring. Like, is this stuff sometimes cut content for lawyers is held up as an explanation for the questions we have, but are we beholden to look at the work as is, or are these things, these kind of alternate paths, valid for understanding? And they said, I don't think looking at cut content is essential for understanding the game. I think the text of the game that is purely the game content, what you play, is what should inform your ideas and lore about the game, coupled, of course, with the discussion with the community. But at this point, we need to make a couple of clarifications about what people call cut content. In the game files, there's a lot of information that you will never see as a player unless you data mine the game. This information could be developer notes, like what's found in maps, where, for example, they attach labels to every elevator, or they name the areas where certain enemies appear, or spawn locations for the player from a teleport, things like that.
Yeah.
In those developer notes, sometimes we find insights as to what the developers were thinking about when designing the game. For example, the Misbegotten are usually called internally Children of Radagon. Should that be canonical lore? I don't think so, but at least it gives you some hints into the design process of those enemies. There's a lot of information like that in the game files.
Yeah. I do not know what the connection between the Misbegotten and Radagon would be.
Children of Radagon.
Yeah, because I see the Misbegotten as another expression of the Omen and thus the Crucible.
Yes,
just another way people can come out quote unquote wrong, or at least afflicted, right? And I do not see Radagon as associated with those at all. Like Radagon, for all intents and purposes, appeared out of nowhere and disappeared into nowhere.
Yeah, for reasons. Yes. A very clear reason, or for reasons that we find out at the end game, or from a certain statue. It's, but yeah, I also would not have made that connection, but it's interesting to know that that was the intent at some point.
Yeah. So that is developer, comments and notes and things like that, but also going into the things that we call cut quests. So they continue. Then we have what we call cut quests. Elden Ring has a bunch of those, as shown in my YouTube channel. The problem with using these quests as some sort of lore explanations is that many of them are from alternate timelines of Elden Ring, like the case of the Gilbert, Vike, and Kale quest mentioned above. So that Gilbert talks about the God of Vengeance and links Radon to it, it means nothing for the current game lore, since, as explained already, that is an alternate storyline from the retail Elden Ring.
Yeah. They go on. A problem I find is that sometimes cut content is published, but it's not contextualized in the game's development history, which can create problems for users that want to base their lore discussions on cut content. Same happens with compilations of cut dialogue. And this is, this has happened the entirety of my career of looking into FromSoft games, right? Just another piece of weird connection between Elden Ring basically being Dark Souls 2 too. This kind of restart with these little elements reminds me the most of Dark Souls 2.
Yeah,
with the original version with the Don Quixote kind of theming and stuff.
Yeah.
Having this entire other history, it feels very big. Having this whole thing with Radon cut to a God of Vengeance and stuff that's entirely different.
Yeah. Entirely different. And I think that, this goes back to deleted scenes in DVDs and movies. What they really meant is, because of this thing that was shot, neglecting the fact that it was cut probably for a reason.
Yeah. Editing is creation.
Yes.
Cutting is creation.
Yeah, and I think a lot of what we, like gets into this is, this kind of muddling of, let's say, like collective interpretation, kind of being a little bit corrupted or at least influenced by algorithm tuning, which is like, it is much more attractive to get new people to look at your shit if you're able to say the real truth behind Saint Trina. Right,
100% is the thumbnails and stuff. And then from our perspective, or even just from a consumer's perspective, it can be hard at a certain point to keep the line straight between these three different categories of like in-game cut quest and developer insight stuff. Like at some point, it's very hard to have organizational files for that just because of how brains work. Without actually using a corkboard and string.
Some kind of internal wiki or what have you. It's tough. I think what it comes down to is that like the cut content stuff, like it looks like it can slot in and fill in the gap, fill in gaps that we see, and it's roughly the same shape, but it is not watertight.
People love a complete picture.
Yes.
They kind of conclude there, without context, there isn't much you can conclude from reading, listening to unused dialogue. If you understand dialogue IDs and how they play into quest lines and cutscenes, then you can disambiguate and see where they're used in the game. As an example, this video places some unused dialogue as it would have been said by Margit. This is the kind of prayer that Margit would have given. I've seen reference to this several times here. No, I was thinking of Godric. This one I don't know.
This one is cut dialogue when Margit appears outside of Leyndell.
And then finally I asked, because I'm me and I always want to geek out about this shit and just favorites, the thing I ask everybody at the end of every interview, like what bosses did you really like? Just because I'm a dork. And they tell us what they said. Cole.
They said, from Elden Ring, I loved the vistas and the sense of wonder that exploration gave me. Looking at a faraway location and then being able to just go there was amazing. I didn't find the boss fights to be impressive, to be honest, if I consider the bosses from Bloodborne or even Sekiro, where I like the combat pace much more. And then they continue. I also have to say that due to data mining, I haven't played the game much. I got the platinum and then focused my time on data mining. So I haven't really tried to learn the bosses in the same way that I know Bloodborne, Sekiro, or Dark Souls 3 bosses, for example.
It's only in these games that getting the platinum is not really playing the game.
I was going to say.
It is only by, I've played Dark Souls 20 times standards.
Must be fucking nice.
This is very funny. So very at least I think so. Insightful interview, good insight from this person, and really interesting stuff, and I love their work.
Yes,
so love to put some eyes on it. In case you're not familiar.
Yeah. So go to, their YouTube URLs are dumb and bad.
Yeah, reading them out makes no sense. It just put into the the YouTube search bar.
SekiroDubi is what it is. Really grateful for the insight.
Absolutely. And again, big thanks to Austin. We're moving on now to your responses. We just wrapped up the Crumbling Farum Azula and Mohgwyn's Palace. The standard disclaimer, if you wrote in and we're not reading your question, it's typically because somebody else wrote in something very similar. And we don't want these episodes to be a gabillion years long. Like this is already going to be a long episode. So please don't feel offended by that. We do get them and we do read everything. But sometimes we do cut for space or we cut for repetition.
Yes.
So,
so getting started here with some follow-up from previous episodes. Violet writes, calling Placidusax an Elden Lord to me fits in with the item descriptions all having a sort of implied historiographical perspective. I interpret it as being that the writers of the description had Elden Lord as their only frame of reference for the kind of supreme sovereign that Placidusax had been, and so designated him that way. This drew an awful lot of, let's say, lightning, not fire. Let's say
this is close to our initial interpretation, but there's a alternate interpretation that I find pretty compelling. That was something that we missed, we neglected to mention. And again, I don't feel a whole lot of shame about that. It's part of why we have these, right?
Yes.
Like we're trying to get as many eyes on this big complicated thing as possible and incorporate as many as possible. So a little bit more on that in a moment. But that's close to our initial interpretation. We're going to present an alternative interpretation as well. Drew says, just hopping in to say that the sax at the end of Placidia sax is much more likely to refer to the Latin root for stone, akin to the scales and whatnot. Thus, Fortis sax is strong stone, Grand sax is large stone, Placidia sax is peaceful stone. Lana sax is a bit of a twist that maybe does refer to a sword, since it's a mashed up together with lan, possibly lancia or spear.
Yeah.
Spear stone.
Porque no los dos. That's where you get really good puns, like wordplay.
Yeah. And I also I'll admit to a weakness in terms of Latin roots and stuff.
Roots, yeah.
I'm not good at that. So it's my brain elides it.
Yeah. Good but good additional context nonetheless.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Scott writes, I think a missing piece in your guys' lore discussion around placid dude sax is that there is actually a representation of what seems to be a more primitive Elden Ring in the Malekith boss arena. So it looks like there was actually an Elden Ring for him to be an Elden Lord of. Also, if paralleling to the current Golden Order, the fled god in the situation wouldn't be the Greater Will, as Cole suggested, but America equivalent. And as such, that epoch's vessel for the Elden Ring. Who that character might have been is really just speculation. Maybe Glowmide Queen, but they'd both be subservient to the Greater Will. Here's where we run into the problem of you've got giants, and giants.
Yeah.
Like what god is being referred to? America like vessel, or the outer god which has no form. Yeah,
gods mean so many things.
Yes,
in this game. This is the other kind of interpretation bit about Placidia Sax's, the arena, whether he is an Elden Lord. And several people pointed this out. I want to do a shout out as well to Sean, the lore hunter, who had a good point about this. It was very similar to this. And it's just something I remember seeing it in the arena, and then just
we did talk about it.
we did, but not it. It didn't hit my. It didn't trigger the connection for me.
Yeah.
Like it being a thing that does show a ancientness, a history to this concept of Eldenness that would make Placidia Sax possibly, a straight up Elden Lord, not just the writer's best word for it.
Yes.
If that makes sense. So that's the alternate interpretation to that, I think.
Yeah. I don't know what to make of it. We're going to get again a lot about this in the responses.
Several people wrote in, which is good. Like it's not on people writing in to know that other people have already written in.
Yes.
About a thing like that's that's not your responsibility.
And it's all additive too. Like it's going to come up a lot, but everybody has different they're pulling from different creators as well to bring a little bit more into it here.
Off that topic, Mr. Creffery says, is blood tainted excrement the worst thing that FromSoft has asked us to pick up as treasure? Surely it's up there with red jelly and Bloodborne. May chaos take the world.
Yeah.
It's pretty bad, but I was just thinking about how many gnarly things that Bloodborne asks you to pick up that are literally just like fetuses and babies and stuff,
also just half mummified things, hearts and shit.
Cords.
If you pull even just the eyes, right?
Yeah.
If you pull even just the the chalice dungeon items, the arcade, the tokens that you get, any of them, I think. I don't know. Blood tainted shit is kind of mundane, actually.
It's real gross, but it's things that a lot of parents have to deal with.
Yeah.
Or owners of sick pets. Whereas an actual umbilical cord, that's just doctors, or an actual mummified fetus.
Yeah.
That's nobody. That's Egyptologists. Most people don't have that experience. Whereas a lot of people are going to have a bloody shit. just sorry, youth. Sorry, Gen, I hate to break it to you, Gen Z.
That Spectre is working his way down the hallway, knocking on doors. All right.
Yep. It's only a matter of time before it happens to you, and you won't even do anything to earn it. It's not like you're going to have like a bad night of drinking or eat some garbage. You're just going to wake up one day and you're going to have like a real fucking rowdy shit, and you're not even going to know where it came from or why.
Yeah.
It's like those crones in the beginning of Dark Souls 2. you will have a bloody shit and you won't even know why.
a little bit of a peek behind the curtain here. Part of the reason I include this, so Gwen, our producer, helps us compile these responses, and she will give like a rough categorization for them. So when we go through and choose them, it's easier to pick and see. The categories use something like lore, or it's about this particular boss. Here in talking about like, is blood tainted excrement the worst thing that it asks us to pick up? Gwen made the category sticky white stuff erasure.
Yeah,
so
it's very funny.
Yeah, we're picking up a lot of just like mysterious gotta become
like goo. I cannot believe that in Demon Souls they did sticky white stuff. Like that made it past everybody, and they're like, yeah, man.
Yeah, go for it. Holla, it's magic.
So funny. That's so funny. The fire equivalent in that game is turpentine. Like it's the most mundane thing that you can actually go get, and then when it comes to describing the magic come, it's just like, I don't know, stuff.
Getting into Crumbly and Farum Azula stuff, we have Mark here writes in saying, on my first blind playthrough, I was massively underpowered in Farum Azula. I wasn't leveling my vigor enough and was getting demolished by everything. I ended up doing a lot of the bad Dark Souls behavior of suicide running past everything to pick up items and grab bonfires. Overall, I think the difficulty curve of the game is pretty uneven, with a huge spike starting at the mountaintops that continues to here.
A very common refrain. So much so that before I played this, friends of mine who did not realize how blind I was trying to go. And this was just like, oh, Gary's gonna fucking hate this, because I can complain about these games being overly hard sometimes. I think that for me, just having the different approaches changes it. I think this area is hard. I think the Halig Tree is hard. I think these areas are hard, but they still feel good to me. And it's largely because I can hit somebody with a ranged weapon, pull them in, and duel them.
Yes.
So
when you say multiple ways to approach, you're not talking about like, because it is a relatively linear area. You're referring to like builds, right? But the actual verbs and builds that you have as compared
being able
to
have a bow, and having it's being able to juke people off of cliffs and stuff. Do things like that, degenerate tactics that work. Justine M says, the Tarnished Archaeologist has done an amazing amount of work to uncover Farum Azula's lore, and though you've not gone around to it, I strongly urge you to check out his Empires Risen and Filled series for an elaboration about what I'm going to discuss. To start, there are tree reliefs littered all over the place. Not Erd tree reliefs, which you'll find throughout most of Lindell, but the previous regime's tree, informally the Great Tree. There are also depictions of the Elden Ring, not the same Elden Ring depicted in Lindell, but one of a different configuration. This points to Marika's conflict with the Glomide Queen, thus the presence of the Godskin duo, scions of the Glomide Queen, thus the presence of banished knights, on loan from Stormvale collection, but previously a vassal of the Great Tree regime, and all pointing to Placidusax as the Glomide Queen's Elden Lord.
It sounds like the Tarnished Archaeologist does really good work. We have another response right after this, talking about what they have dug up, citing the presence of the Godskin duo here is, to me, that feels more directly related to the fact that this is where Malekith was banished to while holding while holding that. I think that like they are trying to get at it. I do not see other stuff that like explicitly links it to the Glomide Queen, or it links Placidusax or the dragons as a whole to death. like other than like, we see Fortisax and how like aberrant and unusual that is. There just does not seem to be enough of a connection between the dragons and destined death there. And the presence of the Rune of Death, I think, speaks more to the fact that there is a primordial and quote right version of the Elden Ring that includes the Rune of Death that Marika befouled by trying to take the Rune of Death out of it.
By yanking it. It's always a hard thing to comment on somebody else's work when I haven't seen it.
I don't want to, because it sounds like they do really good work and have a base of knowledge that we don't.
And the truth of it is, like, the reason why I haven't caught up on that, even though like people have told me over and over, like this person's really good. I will. It's just time, because I didn't know about them until relatively late.
Yeah.
So when I was first playing this game and was devouring everything I could about it, I did not know about them. Like it wasn't, I wasn't avoiding their work. It sounds really interesting. And now that I know about it, I have so many videos to catch up on, and like also just a full-time job on top of it. Like it is hard to find time for it. It's not lack of interest, or it's not lack of wanting to, it's not that I don't want to see the perspective. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's definitely on my task mask to do at some point. It's just tricky to find time for it.
I'm curious. I mean, I generally don't watch YouTube lore stuff, despite the fact that I know very good people. I just don't watch YouTube very much.
Yeah.
I do other stuff instead. But I'm very interested in the Tarnished Archaeologist, because Mike Ist-Krieg writes in with, again, talking about that knowledge base that seems to be present, saying, I recently watched a Tarnished Archaeologist video on Farum, Azula that dives surprisingly deep into the real-life inspiration for the area, the Varna Necropolis, an ancient Bulgarian gravesite that was discovered in the 1970s and regarded as one of the most important archaeological finds of world prehistory. The shared details are nearly one-to-one, the most obvious being the entombed beastmen clad with jewelry and other gold artifacts. I know this isn't what Mike is trying to say, but talking about, like, shit, over in Bulgaria, they got entombed beastmen. I know they're talking about priests being buried.
The priestmen and beastmen are only a couple, like one syllable apart. So,
they continue. When compared with reconstructions of the real-life graves found in the Varna necropolis, the inspiration is clear as day. Even more fascinating to me, Tarnished archaeologists researched exhibitions all over the world during the time after the discovery of the necropolis, particularly a stretch of months in 1982, where the exhibit was shown in a Tokyo museum, where an 8-year-old Miyazaki surely could have seen something he'd never forget. Pretty cool to imagine things from so early in his life becoming inspirations for stories told today.
Yeah, that is neat. I did not know about the Varna necropolis, but anything that has the necropolis suffix,
I'm down. I'm down with it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just it's one of those things where video games have made me just fall in love with the concept of a necropolis.
Yeah. Necropolis. I love it. This is also, again, a blind spot for me, is the real world, inspirations. Like, I recognized Angkor Wat, in Los Isleth, but that's about as far as it. They have to be pretty famous for me to get them.
And that's where people like the lore hunter, right, and the architectural kind of studies and background really, really come in handy. People who actually know shit, talking with authority,
bringing their day jobs. This stuff is awesome.
Yeah,
William says, Farum Azula, while aesthetically amazing, also culminates in a good representation of my biggest negative of Elden Ring. The names in this game are so confusing to me. It wasn't until we were literally fighting each other that I realized Malekith, the Black Blade, was the name of a guy and not a sword like Excalibur. This stuff is all over Elden Ring and made the story very difficult for me to track over a 100-hour playthrough. Is the Black Blade a guy or a sword? Is Destined Death a concept or a force or a god or a literal runic object? Is the Elden Ring an actual ring that one could literally shatter? Or is it a conceptual ring or a magical ring? For so much of my playthrough, I thought the greater will was like a general idea, not realizing until I looked online that it is a specific deity. I love this game, but this kind of thing really made me feel like I had no idea what I was doing right up until the end.
I can totally get the complaint, alongside like, oh yeah, I've got G, R, and M names.
Yes.
I think it's going to be a matter of taste because I do like that ambiguity in a lot of sense.
The answer is always it's both.
Yes. Yeah.
It's all the things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But where the line falls is weird because like you've got the black blade, but you also have the black knives. Like, yes. Okay.
which are people and knives as well. Yeah. Yeah. It's certainly confusing.
Yeah.
A little bit of poetic license.
Yeah. Elden Ring, namespace pollution, the game.
Mm-hmm.
Matt writes, you guys mentioned that it is strange that Placidusax is referred to as an Elden Lord. Cole then used the analogy that it's like calling Caesar the Pope. This kind of unlocks something for me because Julius Caesar and later Augustus both held positions as the head of the Roman religion. Their title was Pontifex Maximus, the same title as the Pope uses today. It very well could be that during the Age of America and the Greater Will, they took the title that already had meaning and power and used it for themselves. Over time, the association became tied to their empire, not the previous ones. In the Bloodborne season, Gary said something that I believe holds as a theme for many FromSoft games. It's the new order pretending to be the oldest order. I feel like it also applies here as well. Very aptly put, past Gary.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. That guy seems smart. It's too bad he hated Bloodborne. That for people who are just listening, I don't hate Bloodborne.
Yeah.
I just realized this is a public episode and it's been like 8 years since then. So that joke that is the thing I'm still sore about maybe won't have the same cachet. People got very mad at me because I was critical of some parts of the end of Bloodborne.
Yes.
And kept saying I hated Bloodborne. And then it became a little bit of a running joke. Yep. That is what that is in reference to. When in fact, I love Bloodborne. Mm-hmm. The opposite of hate.
Yeah.
That is a good point as well. Again, this bit about referring to Placidusax as an Elden Lord has many angles of approach.
Yes.
Charlie says, I never worked out why it's so bright in crumbling Farum Azula. Is it because we're nearer to the top of the Erd Tree? Anyway, the only thing I don't love about the area is the fact that it's non-negotiable in any playthrough. And while some places like Stormvale, and to a lesser extent Rea Lucaria, seem to play out differently each time, Crumbling Farum Azula is a lot more linear. I've explored the whole place, I've done Placidusax twice, and you can't just run through it either. So every time I've got to methodically traipse through that whole bit with the knife eagles and the lightning, hate that bit, and all the parkoury bits where you have to jump from platform to platform. Great the first time, not so great on subsequent plays. Also, I know people complain about Malekith and the Godskins on this level. Piece of piss. The real tough boss in this area is the Sentinel before Malekith. Screw him to hell and back. First time was ridiculously tough. Second time was a joke. He really hates his own ancient dragon's lightning, as well as holy bubbles.
Yeah, I mean, there is precedent for dragons not liking bubbles. See Mega Man 2.
It's 100%. Yeah. Tell my kids that's Placidusax. That linearity I think is true of this. Mm-hmm. The thing that is a balm for me with it is that I come here so less frequently since it's at the end, right?
Yeah.
So like I've started more playthroughs of Elden Ring than I finished. Mm-hmm. So those areas that are early that do play out differently every time, by the time I get to Farum Azula again, it's been long enough that I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that to invalidate the point. That's just how I've responded to it.
Yeah. This is a pro tip, not for Charlie, because I'm sure they figured this out, but also for anybody who might be banging their head up against Placidusax. Do not start at the grace that precedes where you jump off. Start at the Great Bridge grace, where you can just go down and then run through that little building and then out to the ledge.
Nice.
That way you don't have to deal with the lightning slopes, things like that. Yeah.
I never figured that out. Like when I beat him, I just had to do the boss run.
Yeah.
Over and over and over.
That just ended up working out to be a little bit easier because that sucks. I don't appreciate that Charlie tried to begin with a gotcha. Like speaking sarcastically, like I never worked out why it's so bright and crumbling Farum Azula, where you're up in the sky, like, okay, why would it be bright? Maybe implying that there is some kind of sun present.
Yeah.
Obviously the Tempest has obliterated what served as the Erd Tree in Placidusax's time, and strewn the bits about and suspended them in the air, providing ambient light in the area. as it cannot be, planted there and providing light centrally. You buffoon.
Obviously.
Yes.
Obviously. What does Al say?
Al says, I never did beat Elden Ring. The furthest I got was that horse riding hard ass outside Malekith's fog wall. I just could not beat him.
Horse riding hard ass.
Yeah.
Welcome to Ram Ranch.
I tried respecing. I tried getting good, whatever the hell that means, but I just could not. And then the few times I ran past him to fight Malekith, he was also an ungodly terror. Only got to a second phase once, and he immediately leapt into the air and one-shot me into oblivion with what I can only describe as a giant red laser, like he is Dr. Evil. I don't want to take away anyone else's enjoyment of the game, but after 120 plus hours of banging my head against it, I finally said, fuck that shit forever. Crumbling Farum Azula, more like crumbling Farum Asshola.
Yep, Ayatollah Assahola.
Yeah. It's consolidating power.
As we speak. The most people came out to say I was an idiot for not liking Malekith as a boss fight. I appreciate each and every one of you who also doesn't like him. The most common response was Gary doesn't like any of the cool bosses in this game.
That's a little unfair.
I think so. I thought that was a little unfair. I like a lot of the cool bosses in this game.
Yeah.
Everyone who doesn't like Malekith, you are my brothers and sisters and non-binary siblings.
Yes.
Jonathan says, Malekith is my most divisive Soulsborne boss. I love his visual design and flair of attacks, but I have a hard time reading those attacks, and his large size doesn't help. His glass cannon nature makes the fight fast and fun, but it's also incredibly punishing, especially with a phase 1 that has a completely unrelated moveset. I love the lore and his presence as a character I've known for most of the game, but why the hell is Grank still in the Sanctum after? Malekith, like Melania, feels like a boss I'd prefer to just select on a menu and fight while also being able to parry a la Sekiro. And I didn't even particularly like Sekiro. It's confusing. I'm confused. F you, Malekith, my sweet, sweet doggo. Thank you. Welcome to the Brotherhood. A couple people asked what's up with Grank being there, and I wish I had an answer for that.
I really don't.
It's the number one thing that made me think I was traveling through time.
Yeah.
When I first went here, because FromSoft has done that before, but then there's a lot of counter evidence to that, so I got no fucking clue.
Yeah.
It just people can project in this world.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's all I got.
Mm-hmm. So. It has to be something to do with just mechanical reasons is all I have to say. I know that is unsatisfying. I think everybody wants an answer for something, but if you wanted to continue turning on that death route and getting those getting those treats, maybe they didn't want to cut off that ability entirely for you. Yeah, it's inconsistent when FromSoft decides to do that or not. But yeah, I don't know. That's I didn't address it because I don't have a good reckon on
it is a common thing for FromSoft to do to take something that can be a boss and also apply them to a gameplay mechanic like that. And I don't have a full catalog on every time they've done it or how they've handled each time. I can't remember if you can still Dark Moon after killing Dark Sun Gwendol and stuff like that,
or Gravelord after killing Nito.
I think you can still Gravelord because I did it. But I think it does vary from case to case.
Yeah.
Really. So.
Yeah. Mateus writes in saying, Malekith is one of the best FromSoft bosses of all time. It's always under 2 minutes, and either I die or he does. It's brutal and fast, and his design combines wolf and tiger into a tragic beast man that I fucking love. His armor is also the best. Welcome, brother.
We're choosing sides. I think one of the reasons why maybe it doesn't fall on the cool side for me is I don't like Beastmen that much. Which doesn't, that's not actionable. That's not a,
that's
insight.
Also
it's just
not why I like him.
No, I know. I was just thinking about just him being a tiger man.
Yeah.
I like Ludwig, who's a horseman, because that's grotesque and weird.
Yeah.
I've just seen a lot of were-tiger kind of stuff. Now, I'm on Blue Sky. I've seen all the art.
Coming in here telling me that Ray from Breath of Fire 3 isn't really cool.
He's not.
Don't that just beat all? Come on.
Yeah. You're out of the Brotherhood. Kyle says, there's one very important detail in Farum Azula that you didn't mention, which is easy to miss. In Malakath's boss room, we find a depiction of the Elden Ring that is very different from the one associated with Marika's Golden Order, which you can see here. There's a link. There is a ton of speculation about what it represents and how it differs from the other versions of the Elden Ring we see in other places in the game, but a fairly straightforward conclusion to make is that this is the Elden Ring from the Age of Placidusax, supporting the idea that they were in fact a legitimate Elden Lord. Personally, I agree with the idea that the Elden Ring is a symbolic construct that is both physical and metaphysical at the same time, and its particular configuration determines the characteristics of the world. For example, Marika removing the Rune of Death from it literally removed death from the world until it was stolen. It seems like Placidusax's age was probably a lot more vibrant and diverse than that of the Golden Order, but it's hard to conclude much more than that. Also, isn't it weird that none of the ancient dragons talk? They seem to have been able to negotiate with Lindell, but they never talk to the PC. I don't think that's an important bit of lore, but it always seemed like a strange creative decision to me.
Yeah, it's weird that we don't get a talking dragon, especially since we see that they had a whole civilization and shit.
Yeah. But they also, I wonder if the idea is just like so much time has passed.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
You know, that like they've lost the ability. Is why they don't talk and why they attack you.
They never would have spoken our language, or they communicate in different ways, etc. You know,
yeah, because we don't know how Lindell communicated back in the day, like what exactly either. You know, so we know they did that, but also like they are immediately hostile, and sometimes there are actions that belie an intelligence, right? So like the dragon that is Ronnie's bodyguard, you know, acts intelligently, to a degree, but most of the other ones don't. Yeah. You know, they just attack. They are very animalistic in this. So it could be an element of degradation.
Yes. Know? Yeah. Regarding the rune that's in Malakath's chamber, I swear that I am not trying to like engage in sophistry here, but I just want to kind of give a little bit of a thought process on this, which is, you know, about certainty. It does seem very likely that could have been there from the time of Placidusax. There's nothing stopping people from casting or carving that relief after the fact, though, after Malakath was put there, right? So I just whether that's a new addition or not in this room that Malakath has made his own, I do not know.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Do not know.
Mateus writes, we're moving on to Mohgwyn Palace stuff here. Mateus says, for me, Mohgwyn Palace is the biggest drop in enjoyment on subsequent playthroughs. The first time I got there after Vare's quest, it felt mysterious and cool. Being able to see the palace back in the ancestral followers camp in Shifra River added to the anticipation. Now that I beat the game 3 times, Mohgwyn Palace is a boring detour with uninteresting visuals, horrible Vare invasions in the Blood Pool, and awful encounters with Blood Disciples in the Dark Cave. Whenever I get there, I speedrun to grab the Swarm of Flies, Easy Somber Ancient Dragonstone, and Albinoric Farm Grace. And then there is Mohgwyn. As you keep saying, these games find your weakness. On my first playthrough, I beat him no problem, but the next 2 have been hour-long challenges, making me question my sanity. Overall, the location is a cool idea, wasted by its execution.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I like the boss.
Underbaked.
Yeah, the area is definitely the Izalith of Elden Ring. In that respect, it's interesting contrasting it with how much, like I'm a defender of all my children in Dark Souls 1, but I recently beat that randomizer for Dark Souls 1, so I spent more time in Izalith. How an underbaked area in Dark Souls is so much more underbaked than an underbaked area in Elden Ring.
Oh yeah,
you know, like the floor has gotten a lot higher. Which is nice to see that kind of progress. Mansour says, previously both stated the Frenzied Flame is a much more interesting and engaging expression of nihilism than the troublesome turd taster. But Mohg performs the double tap by completely overshadowing him as the game's truest, greatest edgelord. Incest, necrophilia, pedophilia, hematologia, mommy kink, stabbing an invisible mommy kink. Nothing is off limits as an expression of depravity. What I love most about Mohg is that he isn't all about lashing out at society or wallowing in self-pity like the contemptible caca cruncher. He revels in creation, extends a hand to the downtrodden, and promotes unwavering optimism. Hardly qualities you'd expect from the ruler of an underground blood castle. Mohg could have ended up a simp to his own oppressor, like his brother Morgott, or simply could have sought to spread as much pain and suffering like the pee-pee poo-poo man. But instead, he chose to create something new, a brand new dynasty that would welcome all comers with a warm embrace, led by an outer god in the form of a mother. I found that beautiful and certainly purposeful, as it was ultimately the refusal to provide love and care from Mohg's biological mother that began this chain reaction. The formless mother isn't the stepmom, she's the mom who stepped up. Step formless mother is very funny. There's a reason why the Mohgwyn dynasty name shares a suffix with America's favorite son, Godwyn. Mohg's simply a little boy who wants to be loved.
Wow, sympathy for the devil.
Yeah, good response.
Yeah, that.
I mean, it is a funny response that is pointing out, the actual reasons why I like Mohg better than Pee-pee Poo-poo Man.
Mm-hmm.
Is that wanting to do good in a twisted way is always more interesting than just wanting to watch the whole world burn, and everyone get fucked.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Mohg has motivations that aren't just fuck everything, I'm a teenager.
Yeah.
So.
Where do I know Pee-pee Poo-poo Man before? I know you've said it and I've heard other people say it. Is that a reference to something that I'm unaware of?
I don't think so. I think it's just the way you describe somebody who is a pee-pee poo-poo man.
Oh, okay. You just know it when you see it.
Pee-pee and poo-poo modify man. I think it doesn't go any further than that.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah. Poo-poo and pee-pee. That's actually the answer to Ravel's quest line in Torment. Is that pee-pee and poo-poo modifies a man? I've updated my journal.
Oh man. Matthew writes, I'm hoping against hope that the Mikola egg isn't the gateway into Shadow of the Erd Tree. What a total pain in the ass it would be to have to fight Mohg again before playing the DLC. I mean, I'll do it if I have to, but come on, that would suck so much.
That it would be annoying to get to that.
Yes.
I love FromSoft with all my heart. Their how to get to the DLC has always been an obnoxious pain in the dick.
Yeah.
Replaying Scholar of the First Sin and being reminded how they change where the keys are for the DLC. And they're all a huge pain in the dick to getting to Artorias of the Abyss. Like, good God.
Yeah.
Making you fight the Hydra, which is a busted ass boss. Like, I like the Hydra. I have some affection for him, but that doesn't work.
Nope.
That is a non-working mechanical encounter.
No. Getting to the old hunters. It's like, just go here and get killed by this thing. All right, cool.
Like this far in the game, like they're always doing that shit.
Yeah.
So it is a bummer. It's part of the reason why I want to have a game set up for it.
Yes. Yeah.
Specifically. Our final response here, Christopher says, this is more of a general comment on the lore, but I thought it was an interesting connection to real-world religion. The 3 fingers and 2 fingers orders seem quite abstract, but in the Eastern Orthodox Church, you make the sign of the cross with 3 fingers, while in the Russian Orthodox Church, Old Believers, you make the sign of the cross with 2 fingers. The Old Believers, 2 fingers, were very opposed to the new Eastern Orthodox Church's use of 3 fingers because it caused a rift between the 2 traditions.
Man, we fight over some dumb shit.
The number of fingers being held up. Man will make war over just absolutely, what side of toast is buttered.
Yeah, you part your hair on the right?
Yeah, them's fighting words.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, more knowledge that the audience had no idea about that, about that similarity. Don't know about connection, but similarity at the very least. Yeah.
When I cannot, one little thing that I thought was interesting that came in as a response, but I think it came in too late.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have credit, so I don't want to deny this person credit on purpose, but I don't have it in front of me. Someone mentioned a connection, and this is the reason why I bring it up now is something I've thought of before, and it gets into problematic territory, so I wanted to be careful with it.
Yes.
But it's weird that Mikola compels affection when you start thinking of Mikola with Mohg.
Yeah.
That I don't know what to do with that. I really, before I can land somewhere with that, or whether that's in play. I'm hoping the DLC, illuminates a little bit of that.
Whether how much Miquella was counting on their body being
who's
taken.
in control. Who's in control there. It's a bold fucking thing to do, to make the victim of pederasty have mind control powers and compel affection. If that's actually what they're doing.
That is so fucking dicey.
Yeah, it makes me feel gross saying it. I just wanted to bring it up because I thought it was a cool observation, and it was something that that's fucked up. I wonder if they're going to do anything with that.
Yeah, that was a Patreon comment, is what it was. That is Toshio42. Who wrote in with that. Yeah.
So we'll find out, hopefully. But that is a weird thing to chew on. I'll tell you that much.
Don't care for it one bit.
Thanks, everybody. We appreciate you listening. This episode, as we mentioned before, is on the public feed because we thought it was cool, and we had a lot of insight from other people we wanted to share here. If you want to hear the season and our previous seasons on Sekiro and Remnant and a bunch of other Souls-likes and content episodes and soundtrack episodes and all kinds of stuff, you can join us at patreon.com/Duckfeed.tv. You will have a wealth of old episodes to listen to, and whatever we end up doing in the future. Like, we got this DLC coming, and then after that, the sky is the limit. We don't know.
If you end up liking those Souls-like episodes, either especially the ones on the Patreon feed, know that their format is very similar to Watch Out for Fireballs, kind of the flagship show that we do. We've done a bunch of episodes about things that are close to and related to Souls. Lots of Castlevania stuff. A lot of those are found in the premium episodes, which you get access to at the same tier. So, we understand if you're just here for Elden Ring and Soul stuff, that makes sense. You're listening to this show, but understand that you get a whole bunch, in addition to that, when you throw in probably too much.
Yeah, there's some synergy. Next month on Watch Out for Fireballs, we're talking about Aria of Sorrow. Yeah. Speaking of Castlevanias, and those games have some DNA, even though we've done the old classic ones that have even more DNA. So, we would appreciate that. If you've already done that, if you're hearing this, thank you. We appreciate you very much. We also very much appreciate Gwen, our producer, who helps us run the network.
Yes.
Compile this stuff, edit episodes, things like that. So she is wonderful.
Thank you, Gwen.
Big thanks to Gwen. And we'll be back next week with the Consecrated Snowfield.
Yeah. Getting up in there. There's more to it than you think.
Yeah, there's so much stuff there. There's a unique rune bear that is the hardest boss in the game. I have not beat it. So
yeah. So we'll see you there.
Yep. Umbasa.
And we all pray that we will have far more soon